Right now, North Carolina is bracing for Hurricane Helene. Governor Roy Cooper already issued a state of emergency, and he's preparing, as you see, to give an update from the Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh regarding what is to come. Let's listen.
Joining us, we want to take this time to give you the latest updates on Hurricane Helene as it closes in on North Carolina. This is an unusually dangerous storm that threatens to bring heavy rain and potentially catastrophic flooding tonight and tomorrow for central and particularly western North Carolina. When tropical weather crosses into our mountains, it can be deadly. Just a few years ago, Tropical Storm Fred shocked our mountain regions with torrential rain, sweeping away homes, bridges, and lives. With Helene, this can happen again. And just last week, we were reminded of the unpredictability of severe weather in North Carolina as a coastal storm brought 20+ inches of rain on parts of southeastern North Carolina. With Hurricane Helene, we have to be clear here. Heavy rains and winds are coming. Beware and prepare. Travel will be dangerous. Flooding is likely, and we are preparing for unexpected conditions. Our thoughts are with our friends in Florida and other southern states that are being hit first, and our priority here is to protect lives and manage the impact of the storm on our communities here in our state as it arrives. Helene is forecast to bring more than a foot of rain to parts of western North Carolina, which will likely cause significant flash flooding, landslides, damaging debris flows, slope failures across steep terrain, and river flooding. Even areas that don't typically experience it may see flooding. Cities like Charlotte and Asheville could see flash flooding despite not being in the storm's direct path. To prepare, all North Carolinians should tune into weather alerts today and through the weekend. Tropical storm force winds are possible across western North Carolina later today and into Friday. With already saturated soils from earlier rains, falling trees could cause widespread power outages. As of this morning, there are about 14,000 estimated power outages statewide. There is the potential for tornadoes with this storm system as well, which can quickly spin up with a little warning. This storm path is wide, and its impacts will be felt far from the center of the storm. North Carolina State Emergency Operations Center is communicating with local leaders and emergency management teams across our state. I've activated 175 soldiers and airmen from the North Carolina National Guard, and we've deployed North Carolina swiftwater rescue teams and urban search and rescue teams to assist in the response and to save lives. Our Department of Transportation is standing ready to respond to road closures and repair the damage. We've spoken to Duke Energy and know that line workers are standing by to restore power. Yesterday, I declared a state of emergency to help move supplies like water, food, and medicine, heavy equipment, and to support agricultural operations before the storm arrives. If you do not need to travel, please stay off the roadways, especially in the foothills and in the mountains. Do not drive through floodwaters. We have lost too many North Carolinians who have driven around barricades and into floodwaters, including one just last week in Brunswick County. You cannot tell the depth of water just by looking at it from your vehicle. Turn around, don't drown. If you are told to evacuate, get out of the danger zone. Make a plan now to stay with friends or family if you are in an area that could likely be flooded. And I think that there are a number of these in the mountains that could be this way. Please stay informed to protect yourself and your family. Today I'm joined by Emergency Management Director Will Ray, our Secretary of the Department of Public Safety, Eddie Buffalo, The Adjutant General of the North Carolina National Guard, Major General Todd Hunt. Chief Operating Officer of the North Carolina Department of Transportation, Chris Peoples. The Commander of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, Colonel Freddie Johnson. FEMA Field Coordinating Officer, Craig Levy. Our American Sign Language interpreters are Brian Tipton and Mark Lineberger. Behind the scenes, our Spanish language interpreters are Yasmin Mativier and Tamara Cabrera. At this time, I'll ask Director Ray for his update. Director Ray.
Thank you, Governor Cooper, and good morning, everyone. As the governor said, North Carolina has begun to experience the impacts of Helene, which will continue into Saturday. The impacts of Helene should not be ignored, and all North Carolinians should remain informed, have a plan in place to protect your family, and should take this storm seriously. As Governor Cooper said, the primary threats to our state include heavy rainfall, life-threatening flash flooding, damaging landslides, debris flows, and riverine flooding. Though the primary impacts will be to the mountains and foothills, central and eastern North Carolina can expect heavy rainfall, severe thunderstorms, and possible severe weather such as tornadoes. Today, western North Carolina can expect to see multiple rounds of showers and storms continue. Significant flash floods are likely into tonight prior to the arrival of Helene's rain bands. Tropical storm warnings have been issued from Charlotte to the west, and areas of western North Carolina will receive 9 to 14 inches of rainfall, with amounts up to or in excess of 20 inches possible in some locations. Yesterday, the state of North Carolina requested an emergency declaration from FEMA to provide direct federal assistance for work and services to save lives and protect property. That request was approved this morning by the White House, and also yesterday, the FEMA Federal Coordinating Officer and a FEMA Incident Management Assistance Team from Region 7, our partners in Kansas, arrived to assist us here at the State Emergency Operations Center. There are currently 18 local states of emergencies declared, and we know that that number will continue to go up as of this morning. There are 3 shelters open in western North Carolina, and our North Carolina Emergency Management Human Services branch remains in close coordination with our partners across the state and actively planning for the potential increased shelter support as conditions dictate. The North Carolina State Emergency Operations Center has deployed 16 swiftwater rescue teams and added 3 additional swiftwater rescue teams from our colleagues in New York, Indiana, and Illinois through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact, a resource-sharing mutual aid system between states. Additionally, our North Carolina Urban Search and Rescue teams are at the ready to assist should any landslides or damage to structures occur, with 3 North Carolina task forces currently on state orders. Many local jurisdictions across our state have offered their emergency resources to assist impacted communities. In North Carolina, we operate under a whole-of-community approach to disaster management, and the close collaboration between local communities and the sharing of resources further solidifies that approach. The North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal has activated fire and rescue rostering system to identify additional resources and deploy where needed. These resources include fire marshals, firefighting engine companies, ladder companies, and the State Fire Marshal Swiftwater team. The State Emergency Response Team continues to monitor dams across the state, along with our partners in the Department of Environmental Quality, to ensure that residents are notified in the event of an issue. As the governor said, please avoid traveling if at all possible, particularly in the mountains and foothills. If you must travel, please visit drivenc.gov to check roadway status. This website is updated regularly by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Please do not drive through water and respect the barricades and road closures. For those that are in flood-prone areas, please make sure you're informed that you have a plan of action to quickly evacuate if necessary, and that you're receiving information from reliable sources, such as local emergency management offices and the National Weather Service. Enable emergency alerts on your mobile phone to make sure you receive those life-saving notifications. If you know of a threat, you can take action. Flooding may occur outside of areas that normally flood with the forecasted rainfall totals we are seeing. North Carolina's utility partners are also engaged here at the state EOC and are planning for restoration operations statewide. In many areas, trees may fall due to already saturated soils and cause widespread power outages. Please treat all downed power lines as energized and do not approach them. If you must run a generator or use a grill for outdoor cooking, please do so away from your home, as carbon monoxide is colorless and odorless. The North Carolina Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network, or FIMAN, provides access to the state's nearly 600 river flood gauges. Visit fiman.nc.gov and sign up for alerts for the gauges closest to your home or your community. The lingering impacts of Tropical Storm Debby and potential Tropical Cyclone 8 remain. Our recovery team is maintaining support to those impacted local jurisdictions in central and eastern North Carolina. Damage assessments continue and recovery resources are being provided to those impacted communities. Remember to utilize 911 only for emergencies. If you need general information regarding the storm, please call 211 and leave emergency lines open. Remain alert, informed, and check on your neighbors and those in your community who may need assistance. During a disaster or major event, we are stronger together and make for more resilient communities. Finally, I want to acknowledge and thank those that have left their families and already worked long hours, responded to emergency calls for assistance, and have staffed emergency operations centers and incident command posts across our state to keep all North Carolinians safe. We're fortunate to have such dedicated and professional public safety personnel in our state. Thank you. Governor.
Thank you, Director Ray. Anyone with questions can come to the microphone over here to the right. Any of us are available for questions that you might have. Laura?
Laura Leslie, WRAL. Question for you. You mentioned Hurricane Fred, and we remember that under Hurricane Fred, there were deaths, for example, out in western North Carolina, and there was frustration expressed by some of the local leaders out there about the pace of recovery and the pace of relief and aid. What has changed since then, or what have we learned in the interim that might make things better if there is such a terrible outcome this time?
We learned lessons from Fred. I know that we have a lot of our equipment and supplies that are spaced throughout western North Carolina, and I may call up Director Ray to address this specifically. I also think it's important for people where we expect flooding to go somewhere else, to make sure that you and your families are safe in order to avoid lives. We had to come in with state recovery because, for example, a lot of the bridges that were out in western North Carolina were not public bridges. They were private bridges. And so we helped provide funding to rebuild a lot of that. And when you're in the mountains, just construction and repair work is much more difficult and expensive. I'm concerned about our mountain areas. Seeing the amount of rain that's already on the ground and this storm coming, I've seen firsthand the devastation that it can cause. I've spent many days in western North Carolina getting to these places that were destroyed. So we want people to be careful, to move out if they think that they may be in trouble. And I know that there are a lot of resources on the ready to, number one, to save lives. Director Ray, if you want to respond to that as well, I'll start you over here.
Thanks for the question, Laura. I think, as you referenced, there are a couple of benchmarks.
You've been listening to a special report regarding Governor Roy Cooper and the state of emergency now issued for North Carolina ahead of what is Hurricane Helene, set to hit Florida tonight and bring impacts to North Carolina tonight and especially tomorrow morning. The governor emphasized power outages, flash floods, and tornadoes are all concerns with this storm, primarily from Charlotte west toward Asheville, but the Piedmont certainly not out of the woods, as our meteorology team has been discussing. There are 175 soldiers from the National Guard on standby and 16 swiftwater rescue teams able to assist our local crews from New York and the Midwest as part of this partnership that they have for severe storms like this. Duke Energy, as we know, has crews mobilized to respond to expected power outages here and west of us. And then Brunswick County was of note. Governor Cooper emphasizing the tragedy that happened just last week when someone tried to drive through floodwaters, emphasizing it is so important to turn around, don't drown when weather situations like this happen. We will keep you updated on our end. Of course, you can follow our app, WFMY News 2. It is free to download in your app store for the most up-to-date information and radar as we track Helene. We'll see you back here for WFMY News 2 at noon.
Good Thursday morning. I'm WFMY News 2 meteorologist Ed Matthews. Of course, as Hurricane Helene continues to gain strength in the Gulf of Mexico and already starting to have impacts on the southeast, including the Carolinas and Virginia, we thought it would be nice to update you. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we expect here in our part of the Piedmont. Of course, tomorrow is a weather impact alert day, and that's pretty much all day, but we think the greatest impacts from the storm will come during the Good Morning Show tomorrow. Definitely wake up early and turn on to the Good Morning Show. We'll have the very latest information. Might be some ponding of water on the streets and highways for that morning commute. So morning through midday are going to be the greatest impacts from the remnants in the dying storm Helene. Gusty winds, heavy rain, and the possibility of even tornadoes coming up tomorrow morning. We couldn't rule out a few of those. We've already had several tornado warnings over the southeast, from right here in North Carolina out over the foothills and mountains and down through Georgia and into Florida. So that's going to be a concern as well. Go ahead and charge your devices, cell phones, computers, and if you happen to have maybe a battery operated TV, that would be a real smart move, so you continue to watch us here on WFMY News 2. As the 11 a.m. advisory, it continues to get stronger. It's a Category 2 storm now. Maximum sustained winds are at 105 miles per hour. It's about 255 miles southwest of Tampa, Florida. It's still a respectable distance away from the Big Bend area of Florida and the Panhandle. You see this area right here. This is in general where we think the eye of the storm will approach and move through, probably during the evening and overnight hours, but they're already getting heavy downpours and the winds are increasing in that area. Moving off to the north, the forward speed is up a little bit. It's moving on to the north-northeast at about 14 miles per hour. As we look at our weather impact situation, again, this is going to be Friday morning and through midday, and then we actually see some improvements in the afternoon. Here locally, 35 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts, again in the morning through midday. Heavy rain bands, 1 to 2 inches of rain, but we could see areas of isolated 3 inches of rain here in the Triad. Now, much more rain out over the foothills and especially the mountain locations. I'll show you a graphic in just a minute that suggests that some parts of the mountains could get over a foot of rain and the foothills could get over 5 inches of rain. So be on the lookout and the alert for the possibility of flash flooding, even here in the immediate Triad, but especially west of the Triad, and those power outages. And of course, there is a respectable chance of tornadoes by tomorrow morning. We've had no measurable rainfall so far today in the Triad. We've had some sprinkles, but look at Asheville. Much more rain to come, but already over 4 inches of rain there, over 1.25 inches over at Boone, and about 1 inch at Greenville, South Carolina. Augusta, Georgia, approaching 1.5 inches. Now, about 1.73 inches of rain at Wilkesboro, and of course we saw Boone. Now, this rain will essentially pivot onto the east as we go through the afternoon, as we're starting to see the rain pick up. We'll see this batch move through, maybe a little break during the evening, and then late tonight, after midnight and towards tomorrow morning, we're really going to start to see the rain come down here in the Piedmont, and you can see to our south a large area of rain with embedded thunderstorms. Again, we've had several tornado warnings. We've got one in effect now for the eastern section of Georgia, and we're going to be watching for the possibility of some of those for the rest of today through tomorrow morning. Of course, the system offshore, you don't see anything on radar here because it's just too far to the west and to the southwest of the land-based radars, but you can see the essential band of rain that's kind of channeling up through Georgia, South Carolina, into western North Carolina, and also for our friends in southwestern Virginia. We are already seeing flood warnings. We've got one for Wilkes County and Allegheny County. That's until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Those are the counties shaded in red, and also we've got some over western North Carolina in the Blue Ridge. Technically, the Triad is not in a flood watch, but that may be extended. It mainly goes just west of Winston-Salem and all the way out over the mountain locations. Again, the risk of maybe a few spin-up tornadoes. We've already seen some of those this morning, those tornado warnings. And so we'll be watching those for the overnight period. The better chance of those, and could be widespread, so it bears watching. We can see more of those as we go through the Good Morning Show tomorrow. So it is just really, really important that you wake up early and turn on the Good Morning Show for the very latest information. This is the wind gust distribution that we're looking at. 45 to 55 mile per hour wind gust. Here in the Triad and the foothills, 35 to 45 mile per hour wind gust. And of course, lesser amounts of wind and wind gust as we go into eastern North Carolina. This is not a coastal storm like we usually think about. Here in the Triad and points to the west, we really have to monitor those systems as they move in from the Gulf of Mexico, especially for heavy rain. And man, we're talking about the possibility of some flooding rain and historical flooding out over the mountain location. Some of those peaks could get over 7 to 12 inches of rain. Here locally, in general, for the foothills and the Triad region, about 2 to 4 inches of rain. And of course, again, lesser amounts as we go into eastern North Carolina. So this is kind of reverse from what we normally think. We think the more inclement weather is down east. But again, this is not an East Coast storm. This is a Gulf of Mexico storm. Power outages. That's the reason I talked about charging up your devices today. We will likely see many over the mountains, some here in the Triad, and of course less in terms of any of those power outages for tonight and during the day tomorrow. Already seeing the tropical storm warnings that go all the way up towards Charlotte and over to the mountains of the Blue Ridge and parts of Georgia, and of course down into areas of into Florida are seeing the possibility of hurricane warnings that have been issued where they could see easily winds in excess of 74 miles per hour, likely much higher than that. But once the storm moves inland tonight, it will be weakening. For the rest of today, we'll see some rain around, a few thunderstorms a possibility with some heavy downpours. Looking at mid-70s for us today. The rain only increases and gets more intense after midnight tonight. Scattered storms will be mixed in as lows drop to near 70. Of course, our weather impact alert day coming our way for Friday. Rain and wind, especially during the Good Morning Show in the morning and up through about midday. And then I think we'll start to see some improvements as the system moves on up. The remnant low moves on up into the Tennessee Valley west of the Triad. And at the moment, we're looking at a much drier and really pretty decent weekend coming up. And I think after what we're getting ready to go through, we will be ready for that dry weekend. Highs over the weekend will be in the upper 70s to right near the 80-degree mark. Stay with us here on WFMY News 2. As the storm gets closer, we're going to continue to update our forecast. You can get information right here on WFMY News 2 and on our website, WFMYnews2.com. Stay safe and have a good day.
Hello, this is a mic check for our new newscast coming up in a few minutes. Right now, you're watching our digital feed of the sky cameras. We'll have much more and a recap on the state of emergency issued by Governor Roy Cooper coming up on WFMY News 2 at noon.
It's just me. Well, I'm gonna go back.
Good afternoon, and thank you for watching WFMY News 2 at noon. I'm Megan Malares. Within the last hour, we heard from Governor Roy Cooper as North Carolina prepares for heavy winds, rain, and flooding from Helene. Governor Cooper already declared a state of emergency. He says Helene is expected to cause severe damage from flash floods, mudslides, and landslides, along with power outages. He reiterated now is the time to get prepared and have a plan before the storm hits tonight and tomorrow. There has already been a lot of rain that rolled through North Carolina mountains especially. We have some incredible video of water rushing near Boone. Many western counties in the state have already had significant rainfall, and that's a concern with more rain on the way. You can see water already flooding roadways, gushing into sewer drains. That could cause problems as drivers try to get home to hunker down today and tomorrow. We are bracing for the storm here in the Piedmont. That's why we've declared tomorrow a weather impact alert day. Ed, you've been closely tracking the radar. Where is this storm right now?
Well, the storm is still a great distance away from us, but already we're getting some impacts, as we'll talk about in a minute. The 11 a.m. advisory, it's getting stronger. A Category 2 storm with winds of 105 miles per hour. That's sustained winds moving off to the north-northeast. It's picked up a little bit in its forward motion, moving at about 14 miles per hour. It may strike the Big Bend of Florida as a Category 3 storm later on this evening. The winds will start to weaken thereafter, but we're going to continue to get the impacts, especially tomorrow morning through midday on Friday. Take a look at the rainfall totals so far today as a stream of rain has been moving up through the mountains and foothills. Over 4 inches of rain at Asheville, nearly 1.5 inches over at Boone, 1 inch at Greenville, South Carolina, and you can see nearly 1.5 inches at Augusta, Macon, Georgia, nearly 2.5 inches of rain. Wilkesboro, nearly 1.5 inches of rain there, and we're starting to see now some of that rain pivot into our part of the Piedmont, so the rain elements will only increase later this afternoon and overnight tonight as all this rain continues to track in from the south. I'll have much more coming up in just a minute.
Some Triad school districts are adjusting already to prevent putting buses on the road in severe weather. Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools will be closed for students and staff tomorrow. All extracurricular activities are canceled. Surrey County schools are closing at 2 today with no after-school programs, and tomorrow will be a remote learning day. Wilkes County schools are closing at 1 today with no after-school programs. Tomorrow is an optional teacher workday. Allegheny schools are dismissing at 12:30 today. Schools will also be closed tomorrow. All afternoon activities today and tomorrow are canceled. And finally, Stokes County schools will go remote tomorrow. Check out WFMYnews2.com, the closings page, as more schools make decisions. Well, the weather has moved up several high school football games across the Triad, so we are doing Thursday football fever this week. You can watch it tonight on WFMY News 2 at 11. Grandfather Mountain is closed today and tomorrow because of heavy rain and strong winds heading toward the western part of our state. We're already seeing sinkholes pop up, and experts say all of this rain increases the risk of landslides. Right now, people close to the Tennessee border are on high alert. In Wilkes County, there is a flood watch in Lacey County since yesterday. Emergency services say there is a plan in place, and they are set to open the Emergency Operations Center in a couple of hours. Water rescue teams are standing at the ready for any unpredictable conditions, and Duke Energy and DOT are on standby too. The Red Cross is urging you to be prepared with a few simple reminders here. This is a checklist. Have an updated emergency plan for family members, everyone in your household. Make sure supplies, water, food, and medicine stocked, and create a plan in the event loved ones are separated. Crews say also take steps to secure furniture outside of your home.
Trees are starting to lose their leaves, so we're starting to see more leaves going down the storm drains. So if folks could get to those storm drains near their homes and clear them out and let the water move into the storm drains a lot faster, that's a great help for us.
Hurricane Helene forced changes to the lottery drawing last night. Lottery officials moved the location of last night's Powerball drawing because of the storm. It normally streams live in Tallahassee, but organizers moved it to the Iowa site to escape Helene. As the storm moves closer, you can keep a close eye on Helene with our live interactive map. Track it where it is, where it's headed anytime. You can find that radar right now on WFMYnews2.com and our free WFMY News 2 app. Well, we are learning sources telling CBS News that New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted following a federal investigation. Adams would be the first sitting New York mayor to face criminal charges. He responded saying he always knew if he stood his ground for New Yorkers, he would be a target. And he says that target is what he became. He intends to fight this. It's unclear what the charges persist of, but national sources say they are a result of a federal investigation against Adams and other staff members. Well, we are now 40 days from Election Day. The economy continues taking center stage with Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump presenting opposing plans for the nation's wallet. Trump was in our state yesterday with a stop in Mint Hill 4 days after his Wilmington rally. During Trump's visit, he discussed the tension in the Middle East, saying the war never would have happened if he were still president. He also addressed job security for North Carolina voters.
Under my plan, American workers will no longer be worried about losing your jobs to foreign nations. Instead, foreign nations will be worried about losing their jobs to America. We're going to take their jobs, we're going to take their factories, and we're going to bring trillions and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the USA and back to North Carolina.
Right now, his campaign calendar outlines visits up north the next 2 weeks and battleground Michigan tomorrow before heading to Pennsylvania. His opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris, spent time in Pennsylvania this week speaking with the Pittsburgh Economic Club. She highlighted an increasingly detailed economic proposal held up by 3 key pillars: lowering costs for American families, investing in innovations and entrepreneurs, and ensuring America leads in future industries like artificial intelligence.
Next generation of breakthroughs, from advanced batteries to geothermal to advanced nuclear, are not just invented, but built here in America by American workers.
Well, today there is a chance both candidates could meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky 1 day after he addressed the UN General Assembly in New York. 1 month into the school year, the homeroom bell rings in cadence with coughs, sneezes, and stuffy noses. So yes, pediatricians are gearing up for what they consider the triple whammy: COVID, flu, and RSV. The CDC's new COVID guidelines acknowledge we are still living with COVID, but no longer need to isolate for 5 days or social distance. Schools in our area are already reporting cases of the virus this year. Flu is also on the horizon. Flu season generally runs October through May, peaking in February. The 2023 to 2024 flu season was the worst in 6 years. 16 children died of the flu. Pediatricians also share concern about RSV, but are hopeful a new protection changes the outlook. We apologize for that video there. It is time now to read to succeed. The Good Morning Show team is continuing our award-winning literacy program for our 12th consecutive year, reaching thousands of young learners and inspiring them to find a love of reading. This morning, we visited Sumner Elementary School, where students and teachers brought down the house with their enthusiasm. The school's top readers got to put on their best newscast and test their speed reading skills with some karaoke. You can catch all those highlights tomorrow on The Good Morning Show at 6 and 9. Coming up next, Helene is shaking up the Florida coast as it rises in severity and tracks our way soon.